What's up, guys? Welcome to Roensch Capital Charts. Today we're taking a look at Tesla stock, ticker symbol TSLA, on a variety of time frames in anticipation of the next trading day, Tuesday, March 12th. All right, guys, Tesla stock here today up $2.43 a share. That's plus 1.39% in regular trading hours. It's essentially flat here in the after hours. Let's get started here today by doing our daily ritual, the volume profile analysis on the 5-minute chart to try to pull out some sample size bias out of today's session. By the way, guys, if you're looking to try to expedite your trading journey, I think you will find our private trading group. It's also an educational resource. I make private videos for the group, and those will be coming more frequently here in the near future. I think you'll find that group incredibly helpful. You can take a look at that link in the pinned comment. I've been working with the group for 3 years now, over 3 years, and the price does go up over time, but you can get grandfathered in at the current rate. Hope to see you join. So, the volume profile here. Let's take a look. You guys know what I'm looking for, right? I want big changes in volume that indicate, okay, a bigger sample size was participating in that particular move. But that sample size change in the volume has to, it has to line up with, it has to correlate, of course, with a bigger obvious move in stock price. But it has to also be out of context for what we normally expect for that time of day. So what I'm really interested in here on Tesla today is that big pump and fade off the open, and then this downside move, okay, later in the day. Now, the amount of moves that we're looking at, of course, it's going to vary every single day. We just want to look at what was most obvious, and did a bigger sample size of the market tell us anything about the bias in that move? So let's take a look here, okay? Now, interestingly, this is actually really interesting. We take a look here off the open. We, of course, saw these two candles and then a smaller red candle. But we saw an increase in volume as the stock pushed higher that actually sustained itself. What is usually contextual? Because we usually have that opening candle being the highest candle, the biggest candle of the day, typically. And then we see a pretty swift fade into the depths of that U-shape. And then we see that contextual back half where that closing candle or the candle after the close immediately, that's oftentimes the case on blue chips, is, I don't know, about half to 2/3 of the size of the opening candle, somewhere in that range. But we didn't actually see a clean taper off, right? We actually saw a pop in volume that actually held itself pretty well here on that bullish move. And then once it topped out and started to fade, we saw volume tank off pretty quickly. Okay, so is it the craziest volume profile we've ever seen on Tesla or any stock? Of course not, but there is something there that tells me, okay, a slightly larger sample size of the market agreed with that upside move compared to the fade. And then as we move later into the day here, we can see that you know, we got a lot of consecutive red candles on that increasing fade. Okay, we of course recovered about half that move into the close. But I'm really interested in the volume on that fade. Did we see anything that was out of context? And, you know, honestly, you might have some people start to argue, well, you know, these two candles were above the following. Listen, this is well within range of what I would say is contextual, as we typically start to see that kind of upside move in volume, that upside curl in the last 45 minutes or so prior to the close. And that is very contextual. So there's, you know, bears, again, I apologize. There's nothing there that I can pull out and definitively say the bears overall won that move in terms of the volume profile alone. Now, let's move on here and take a look at the 30-minute chart. These are going to be the self-fulfilling prophecy psychological levels that I'm paying close attention to here tomorrow, Tuesday. Now, if you guys caught the weekend video, by the way, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I'm covering Tesla every single day here. But if you did catch that weekend video, we were talking in the after hours, you know, and as well, we closed in the intraday session. Below that 50 period, that white line here on the 30-minute chart, which is a heavily watched indicator, the only reason I care about it, by the way, on a heavily watched time frame, the 30-minute chart, today we were able, it was a little bit sloppy, but we reclaimed that level intraday and closed just above it. Again, it was a little sloppy, but we closed above it, reclaiming that 50 period, a hard high volume break upside through, descending or decreasing volume retest, and then a little bit of a pop in volume as we bounced away. I would have loved if that was a little stronger, pushing us up toward that 200 period, but we reclaimed it nonetheless. So bulls, looking ahead here to tomorrow, I would love to see, you know, any downside retest of that 50 period. Of course, I would want to see that hold, but ideally, it's time to start setting the sights on an upside move up toward that 200 period here on the 30-minute chart, which is about 2.3% away to the upside. You know, a reclaim of that 200 period, again, it would be a slightly more volatile day, but we've seen much crazier things out of Tesla here. A break upside through on high volume, right? Similar to today. A lower volume retest, and then as much volume as possible, you know, again, contextually intraday, pull away to the upside. That would be a beautiful day if you're a bull here on Tesla. Bears, priority number one tomorrow is give up that 50 period yet again. High volume downside break through that level, and then listen, average volume, below average volume retest to that level, and then hard high volume fade away. Definitively break and hold that 50 period as a resistance level yet again, like we saw last Friday. That is what the bears would be looking for here on the 30-minute chart tomorrow, at least in my opinion. Now, let's move on here to the 4-hour chart and take a look. You can see here that the moving averages they're not super in play right now. On the 4-hour, that nearest one is the 50 period, sitting right at about 189 a share as of right now. Listen, bulls, I'm still paying attention to the 4-hour chart, even though there's not really an incredibly psychological level that's specific to the 4-hour in play right now. Ideally, bulls, I'd like to see that 50 period start to flatten out. I don't necessarily want to see that get down below 185, 180, although it would take time. I would love to see that flatten out, you know, as ahead of 185 as possible, so to speak. Bears, you want that 50 period moving average tanking off as quickly as possible, adding a descending psychological barrier, getting as low as possible. You want as many barriers, so to speak, as low as possible, as quickly as possible if you're a bear. Now, on to the most important chart of all. That's going to be the daily. If we take a look here, you can see, again, the moving average is not incredibly in play. The nearest one is the 50 period or the 50-day, and it's above $200 a share. But there's a more important, more obvious story here on Tesla, on the daily chart on Tesla here today. And we talked about it in the weekend video heading into Monday, today, right? So now Monday, heading into tomorrow's trading day, Tuesday, we barely closed back above the bottom of that 177.50 to 180 channel. But we had talked about how a close above 180 would be beautiful. We did test above 180 today, you know, not able to close that high, of course. But being that the entirety of the channel really, and this is a channel we've had drawn for a while, 177.50 to 180, it's a range, right? It's not an exact penny. But I want to see Tesla, from a bullish perspective, get up out of that range completely and just start closing above 180. That would be a power move, at least in the very short term from a bullish perspective. And I think that's how you start to discourage as many bears as possible, again, in the very short term. Now, bears, you guys, your ideal scenario is to close beneath the bottom range of that channel, which is get a couple closes, starting with, you know, at least one here tomorrow. We had one on Friday. Start closing a little bit more consistently below 177.50 and start to really claim that range as kind of a resistance level, whereas neither side has really fully claimed that range yet. So this is the obvious story right now. 177.50 to 180, you know, depending on what your bias is, you want to close on the side or above or below the side that favors your bias soon. Right, this is going to pick a direction relatively soon. And those are the levels that I'm looking at here. Implied volatility on Tesla right now is a little bit higher in comparison to the last couple of months. So again, understand the higher IV goes in relation to your intended trade time frame. Of course, you have to be contextual about the time frame. But the higher IV goes, the higher the potential risk of IV crush. All right. Now, my favorite part of each video, let's take a look. What was the bias out of the options traders today as they position themselves heading in to tomorrow? So we had 1.59 million total contracts traded here on Tesla today, about 910,000 calls, about 682,000 puts. So we are seeing a call side bias on the overall call put ratio here. Now the delta range that I am primarily interested in, that's 0 to 20, because on average that's going to be the heaviest concentration of short-term speculators, right? Those are those far out of the money cheapy calls and puts. 364,000 calls, 221,000 puts. So we're also seeing a call side bias, you know, not only on the overall call put ratio, but also in that short-term speculator delta range of 0 to 20. Guys, before you head out, be sure to comment down below. I need your vote for tomorrow's wildcard stock. Comment the ticker or company name that you want to see me cover as tomorrow's wildcard stock, and whichever ticker gets the most comments out of, you know, on all of today's batch of videos will be the winner, and that'll be the stock that I'll cover as tomorrow's wildcard name. Also, listen, if you got value out of this video, please subscribe to the channel. I'm covering Tesla every single day, and I'll see you in the next one.